The air in Club Onyx felt thick with desperation, perfume, and ambition. A combination that made my lungs ache as I balanced 4 martinis on my small serving tray. Bass pounded through the floorboards, vibrating up through my worn sneakers as I navigated the packed dance floor. 6 months of working double shifts at this high-end nightclub, and I still hadn't mastered the art of becoming invisible when needed. A drunk businessman swayed into my path, sloshing one of the drinks over my knuckles. The sticky liquid ran down my wrist, soaking the sleeve of my only decent black blouse. "Sorry about that," I muttered, though it wasn't my fault. No one heard me anyway. The club's VIP section loomed ahead, a raised platform separated from the main floor by velvet ropes, and 2 men with earpieces who never smiled. The hostess, Vanessa, had warned me during training never to make eye contact with the VIP guests. "They don't want to know you exist unless they need something," she'd said with practiced indifference. Especially on Thursdays. Thursdays. The night when the real owner of Club Onyx sometimes made an appearance. I'd seen him only twice before. Glimpses, really. A dark silhouette surrounded by an entourage of men in expensive suits, women with glittering jewelry, all of them leaning toward him like flowers seeking sunlight. My co-worker Tina called him Alessio the Beautiful. Though never within earshot of management, she'd whisper stories during our breaks. How at 29, he controlled half the city's nightlife. How people who crossed him disappeared. How his family had old-world connections that made even the police keep their distance. I didn't want to know more. I just needed this job to pay my rent and my brother's mounting medical bills. One of the security men recognized me and unhooked the velvet rope without a word. I kept my eyes down as I carefully placed each glass on the glass-top table. 4 martinis, I said softly, backing away before anyone could complain about the spilled drink. Wait. The single word froze me in place. My heart began hammering against my ribs as I lifted my gaze, just slightly. The table was occupied by 3 women and a man I'd never seen before. They were all beautiful in that polished, expensive way, but the man, he pulled all the light in the room toward him. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Renaissance paintings. Sharp cheekbones, and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb rather than reflect the club's flashing lights. His suit was impeccable, unbuttoned just enough to reveal a glimpse of tanned skin and what looked like the edge of a tattoo. He wasn't looking at me. His attention was fixed on his phone, but his free hand was raised in my direction, one finger extended in an unmistakable command to stay. "Sir?" My voice emerged as barely more than a whisper. "The drink is wrong," one of the women said, gesturing to her glass with a dramatic wave of crimson nails. "I ordered a dirty martini. This isn't dirty." I swallowed. "I'm sorry. I'll get a replacement right away." The man still hadn't looked up. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice smooth and accented. Italian, I thought, though softened by American education. "Emma," I answered, then immediately regretted giving my real name. His dark eyes finally lifted from his phone, meeting mine with an intensity that made my stomach drop. His gaze traveled slowly down my face, lingered on my lips, then continued down to my drink-stained sleeve. Something flickered in his expression. Annoyance, perhaps, or curiosity. "Emma?" he repeated, as though tasting the word. "Bring the correct drink. And?" He paused, his eyes moving to the woman who had complained, then back to me. "Bring yourself a replacement shirt from wherever the staff keeps such things. That one is ruined." It wasn't a suggestion. I nodded quickly and backed away, nearly bumping into another server in my haste to escape that magnetic gaze. In the staff room, my hands trembled as I changed into one of the spare uniform shirts. It was too tight across my chest, but I had no choice. Tina found me there, fixing my hair in the small spotted mirror. "You okay?" "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, reapplying her lipstick. "I'm fine. Just had an encounter with a VIP," I replied, trying to sound casual. Tina's eyes widened. "Which one? Wait, is he here tonight?" I nodded, and she grabbed my arm. "Emma, listen to me. If it's who I think it is, be careful. Alessio Vitale isn't just any VIP. Dangerous, I know. Connected, blah blah." I said, attempting a laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. Don't worry. I'm just replacing a drink, and then I'm back to my regular section. Tina didn't look convinced, but our manager appeared in the doorway, scowling. Martinez, break's over. Russo, there's a dirty martini order for the VIP section. Move it. The night continued in a blur of orders, drunk patrons and aching feet. I delivered the replacement martini without incident, relieved to find the dark-eyed man deep in conversation with someone new. A hard-faced older gentleman who seemed to command even more deference from the security staff. I slipped away unnoticed, returning to the relative safety of my assigned section. It was nearly 2 a.m. when things began to go wrong. The club was still packed, the dance floor a writhing mass of bodies. I was collecting empty glasses when I felt a hand clamp around my wrist. Dance with me, beautiful, a man slurred, his breath hot with whiskey against my ear. I'm working, sir, I said firmly, trying to pull away. Please let go. His grip tightened painfully. One dance. Don't be such a tease. I'm not a tease, I'm a server, I snapped, frustration momentarily overriding caution. And you're hurting me. This only seemed to amuse him. He was younger than I'd first thought, probably mid-20s, with the entitled air of old money. Feisty. I like that, he said, pulling me closer despite my resistance. Let go of my arm, I said, louder this time, looking around desperately for security. But in the packed club, with music blasting, no one seemed to notice my predicament. The man leaned in, his mouth uncomfortably close to my neck. I've been watching you all night, prettiest girl in this place, wasting time serving drinks. I tried to step back but bumped into someone behind me. The crash of breaking glass told me I'd knocked someone's drink from their hand. Perfect. Now I'd have to pay for that too. Sorry, I began, turning to apologize to whoever was behind me. The words died in my throat, standing just inches away, radiating a cold fury that seemed to create a bubble of silence around us despite the pounding music, was Alessio Vitale. Behind him, 2 of his suited guards watched impassively. Problem here? He asked, his gaze moving from my face to the hand still gripping my wrist. The drunk man's smile faltered. No problem, man. Just asking for a dance. Alessio's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, became charged with danger. She's working, he said quietly, too quietly for anyone but the 3 of us to hear. And she said no. Look, I don't want trouble, the man said, finally releasing my wrist. Didn't realize she was spoken for. A muscle in Alessio's jaw tightened. Dance with me, he said suddenly, his eyes finding mine. When I hesitated, frozen in confusion, he leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing my ear as he whispered, Dance with me. He'll see you're taken. And just like that, everyone around us stopped watching. It was as if an invisible barrier had formed, eyes sliding away from us as though it was dangerous even to look. The drunk man melted into the crowd, and Alessio's guards stepped back, creating a small pocket of space on the crowded floor. Before I could process what was happening, his hand was on my waist, warm and steady through the thin material of my shirt. His other hand took mine, and I found myself being guided into a slow dance that was entirely at odds with the fast electronic beat pulsing through the club. I should get back to work, I managed to say, though my body betrayed me by fitting itself against his with embarrassing ease. Your shift ended 10 minutes ago, he replied, his accent thickening slightly. Marco already cleared it with your manager. Marco must be one of his men. The casual display of power, rearranging my schedule without my knowledge, should have alarmed me. Instead, I felt a treacherous flutter of excitement in my stomach. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice barely audible over the music. His dark eyes studied my face. Up close, I could see flecks of amber in their depths. Perhaps I don't like seeing my employees harassed, he said. I could have handled it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm sure you could have, Emma, but now you don't have to. The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. We moved together for several more beats, his hand warm and firm at the small of my back. I was acutely aware of how we must look. The club owner dancing with a nobody server in a borrowed shirt. People are going to talk, I said, suddenly anxious. Let them, he replied with casual indifference. It will keep you safer. Safer. The word hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. The song changed, the beat becoming faster, but Alessio maintained our slower rhythm for a moment longer. Then, with a fluid movement that spoke of years of training, he spun me once before bringing me back against his chest. His face was inches from mine now, his eyes searching, contemplating something that made the air between us feel electric. Thank you for the dance, Emma Russo, he said softly, finally releasing me. I'll have Marco drive you home. How do you know my last name? I asked, a chill replacing the warmth of his touch. That ghost of a smile again. I know all my employees. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, pressing it into my palm. If anyone bothers you again, inside this club or outside it, you call this number, day or night. Before I could respond, he was gone, swallowed by the crowd, his guards falling in step behind him. I looked down at the card in my hand. It was blank except for a phone number embossed in simple black text. What I didn't know then, as I clutched that card like a talisman on the silent ride home in a car worth more than a year of my salary, was that this night, this dance, had set something irrevocable in motion. That the next day would bring a revelation that would shatter the careful, struggling life I'd built. That Alessio Vitale had recognized something in me I didn't yet see in myself, and that his protection would become both my salvation and my greatest danger. Sleep evaded me that night, my thoughts circling back to the dance, to dark eyes, and the whispered words that had scattered onlookers like autumn leaves. By the time dawn filtered through my thin curtains, I'd convinced myself that the encounter had been magnified by exhaustion and the surreal atmosphere of the club. In daylight, it would shrink to its proper proportions, just a brief, strange interaction with my employer. I pushed aside the memory of how perfectly my hand had fit in his, how the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, had lingered on my borrowed shirt. The apartment I shared with my brother Jay was quiet as I made coffee. He'd been asleep when Marco dropped me off, and I was grateful. How would I have explained the sleek black Bentley idling outside our rundown building, the suited driver who'd insisted on watching until I was safely inside? I checked my phone, a text from the hospital confirming Jay's appointment that afternoon. The experimental treatment was our last hope. Draining what little savings we had, I'd need to pick up extra shifts this week. My fingers brushed against Alessio's card, still in my pocket. I pulled it out, running my thumb over the embossed number. In the harsh morning light, it seemed like evidence of a dream, or a warning. The sound of shuffling feet pulled me from my thoughts. Jay appeared in the kitchen doorway, his once athletic frame now thin, leaning heavily on a cane. At 24, just 2 years younger than me, my brother looked decades older, the aggressive form of multiple sclerosis stealing his strength with cruel efficiency. "You're up early?" he said, his smile tight with the pain he tried to hide. "Rough night at work?" I pushed the card deep into my pocket. "Just the usual drunk businessmen," I replied, pouring him coffee. "How'd you sleep?" "Better. Those new meds might be working." He lowered himself carefully into a chair. "You left your uniform shirt on the bathroom floor. It's got something spilled all over it." The memory of the drink sloshing over my hand flashed through my mind. "Yeah, occupational hazard. I'll soak it later." Jay studied my face with the intensity that illness had sharpened in him. "Something happened," he said, not a question. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one where you're trying to decide whether telling me something will make me worry." I sighed. No point hiding things from Jay. He'd always read me too easily. "I danced with the club owner last night." His eyebrows shot up. "The mysterious Alessio, the one your coworker is always gossiping about?" "It wasn't like that," I said quickly. "Some guy was harassing me, and Alessio stepped in. The dance was just to make the guy back off." Jay's eyes narrowed. "And that's all?" "That's all," I confirmed, though the weight of the card in my pocket felt like a lie. He was just protecting his employee, probably worried about a lawsuit. Jay didn't look convinced, but let it drop. We spent the morning in comfortable silence. Him working on freelance graphic design projects he could still manage on good days. Me catching up on bills and laundry before his appointment. It was nearly noon when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Did you get home safely?" My heart stuttered. I stared at the message, then at the business card beside my phone. The numbers matched. "Yes. Thank you for the ride," I replied after several minutes of deliberation. The response came immediately. "Good. Your brother has treatment today, correct?" Ice filled my veins. I'd never mentioned Jay to Alessio. Never discussed my brother's illness or our schedule with anyone at the club. "How do you know that?" I typed with trembling fingers. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Finally, I make it my business to know about people who interest me. A car will be waiting at 2 p.m. to take you both to the hospital. The driver's name is Paolo." I nearly dropped the phone. "That's not necessary," I wrote back quickly. "It's already arranged. Paolo will wait as long as needed and bring you both home afterward." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. The presumption should have angered me. But beneath the shock was a flicker of relief. The bus ride to the specialized clinic was long and painful for Jay, with 3 transfers and too much walking. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. This time the answer took longer to arrive. "Because I can. And because you looked tired last night, Emma. Let someone help you for once." The message hit too close to a truth I barely admitted to myself. How exhausted I was. How close to breaking under the dual burdens of work and Jay's care. But accepting help from Alessio Vitale seemed dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. Before I could respond, another text arrived. "This isn't conditional. No strings. Just a car service when you need it." I showed the messages to Jay, who read them with an inscrutable expression. "What do you think?" I asked. He shrugged, wincing slightly at the movement. "I think that bus ride is killing me, Em. And I think you've been killing yourself trying to handle everything alone. But we don't know this man," I protested weakly. Jay's smile was tired but genuine. "We know he owns half the city and apparently has a soft spot for my stubborn sister. As far as guardian angels go, we could do worse." So at exactly 2 o'clock, we found ourselves being helped into a Mercedes by a quiet, professional man who introduced himself as Paolo. The car's interior was cool and spotless, the ride so smooth that Jay dozed off, his features relaxed for the first time in days. The hospital staff didn't blink at our arrival by private car. They'd seen weirder things. "Doctor." Patel greeted us with her usual calm efficiency, guiding Jay to the treatment room while I settled in the waiting area with a dog-eared magazine. An hour passed. I was halfway through an article about summer fashion when I sensed someone sit beside me. The familiar scent registered before I looked up. Woodsy cologne, subtle but distinctive. Alessio Vitale looked different in daylight. More human somehow, though no less intimidating. His suit was lighter today, impeccably tailored gray that made his olive skin glow. His dark hair was styled away from his face, revealing a small scar near his left temple that I hadn't noticed in the club's dim lighting. "Ms. Russo," he said, his voice that same smooth blend of Italian and American that had haunted my dreams. "How is your brother doing?" I closed the magazine, buying time to compose myself. "The treatment takes about 3 hours. We won't know if it's working for a few more weeks." I paused, then asked the question burning in me. "Why are you here?" He studied me with those dark eyes. "I wanted to make sure the car service was satisfactory. You could have texted." A smile touched his lips, genuine this time. "Yes, I could have." We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the hospital buzzed with activity, nurses hurrying past, families whispering in corners, the antiseptic smell mingling with coffee from the nearby cafeteria. "How much do you know about me, Ms. Russo?" he asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "Only rumors," I admitted. "That you own clubs, that you're connected, that people who cross you regret it." He nodded, unsurprised. "And does that frighten you? Should it?" His eyes held mine. "Not if you're not planning to cross me." A nurse approached before I could respond, handing me a clipboard with insurance forms. I scanned them with practiced dread, my stomach sinking at the numbers at the bottom. Even with our coverage, the copay for today's treatment was more than I'd make in a week of shifts. Alessio watched me silently, his gaze taking in my furrowed brow, the way I bit my lip as I calculated what bills could be delayed this month. "This treatment," he said quietly after the nurse left. "It's experimental." I nodded reluctantly, but promising. They've seen improvement in patients with Jay's type of progression, and expensive. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Very. But worth it if it gives him more time, more quality of life. Alessio's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Family is everything," he said, the words carrying a weight that suggested personal meaning. "You would do anything for him. He's all I have," I replied simply. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition perhaps, or respect. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim leather wallet. Before I realized his intention, he had extracted several crisp bills and was placing them on top of my clipboard. "I can't accept that," I said immediately, heat rising to my face. "It's not charity," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Consider it an advance. You'll work extra shifts at the club to cover it if your pride demands. And if I refuse?" His smile returned, sharper this time. "You won't. You're practical, Emma. And this isn't about you. It's about your brother." He was right, which only fueled my irritation. The money would cover today's treatment and next week's, giving me breathing room I desperately needed. Still, accepting felt like crossing a boundary, acknowledging a connection to this man that extended beyond employer and employee. "I'll pay you back," I said finally, sliding the money into my purse before I could change my mind. "Every cent." "I know you will." He stood, buttoning his jacket with an elegant movement. "Paolo will wait for you, no matter how long the treatment takes. Use the car whenever your brother has appointments." "I don't understand why you're doing this," I said, rising to face him. For a moment, something raw and unguarded crossed his features. "Perhaps I recognize something of myself in you, Emma Russo. The lengths one will go to protect family." He checked his watch. Platinum, I noticed, with a subtle diamond at the 12. "I have meetings this afternoon, but I'd like to continue our conversation. Have dinner with me tomorrow night." It wasn't phrased as a question, and that alone should have made me refuse. Instead, I found myself asking, "What time?" 7. "Paolo will pick you up." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "Wear something nice. But don't worry about impressing me. You already have." He was gone before I could process his words, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the confusing tangle of emotions in my chest. Fear, gratitude, and something more dangerous. Curiosity about the man behind the reputation, the one who'd recognized my exhaustion when I'd thought I was hiding it so well. When Jay emerged from treatment, pale but smiling, I told him only that the car would be available for all his future appointments. The money, and the dinner invitation, I kept to myself. My brother had enough to worry about without adding my strange new connection to a man whose very name made people in our neighborhood cross themselves. That night, as I sorted through my meager wardrobe for something that could be considered nice by Alessio Vitale's standards, I received one final text. "Rest well, Emma. Tomorrow will be illuminating for both of us." I stared at the message for a long time, wondering what revelations awaited me, wondering if I was stepping willingly into a beautiful trap, or if, as Jay had suggested, I'd somehow found a guardian angel in the most unlikely of forms. Either way, I knew with bone-deep certainty that after tomorrow night, nothing would be the same. The next day passed in a blur of anticipation and doubt. I called in sick to my morning shift at the coffee shop where I worked before my club hours, spending the extra time scrubbing our apartment and helping Jay with his physical therapy exercises. He watched my nervous cleaning with knowing eyes, but asked no questions. When I finally confessed about the dinner invitation, his only response was a thoughtful nod. "Just be careful, Em," he said, his voice gentle. "Men like that are used to getting what they want." "It's just dinner," I insisted, though we both knew better. At 6, I stood before our bathroom's spotted mirror, barely recognizing myself. The black dress was a relic from another life, purchased years ago for a gallery opening when I still believed my art degree might lead somewhere. It was simple but elegant, with a neckline that hinted rather than revealed, and a hem that fell just above my knees. I'd swept my dark hair into a low chignon, applied makeup with a careful hand, and borrowed Jay's mother's earrings, small pearls that had somehow survived our many moves and financial crises. "You look beautiful," Jay said from the doorway, leaning on his cane, like Mom. The comparison brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Our mother had been dead for 5 years now, a sudden aneurysm taking her before she could see what had become of her children. One fighting a degenerative disease, the other abandoning her dreams to pay medical bills. "She'd be proud of you," I said, blinking back the moisture. "Of how brave you are." Jay's smile was sad. "She'd be proud of both of us. But she'd also tell you to live a little, Em. You've put your life on hold for 2 years now." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Paolo. He was waiting downstairs. The car ride was silent, except for the soft classical music playing through hidden speakers. Paolo's eyes met mine occasionally in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. We drove toward the city center, then veered east toward the river, finally stopping before a restored Victorian mansion set back from the street behind wrought iron gates. "Mr. Vitale's residence," Paolo explained, coming around to open my door. "He prefers to dine at home." Home, not a restaurant with witnesses, but his private space. The realization should have alarmed me more than it did. Instead, I felt a flutter of curiosity as I followed Paolo up the stone path to massive double doors. The interior was a study in refined masculinity, dark woods, leather furnishings, and subtle lighting that created pools of warmth in the high-ceilinged entryway. Art hung on the walls, not the generic pieces I'd expected, but original works that drew the eye and challenged the mind. I recognized a Caravaggio reproduction in the hallway, the chiaroscuro effect creating dramatic shadows that seemed appropriate for this house and its owner. "Mr. Vitale is in the study," Paolo said, gesturing down a corridor. "First door on the right. He asked that you join him there." Left alone, I took a deep breath and made my way toward the indicated door. It stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the hallway. I knocked gently. "Come in, Emma." Alessio stood by a window overlooking a garden illuminated by discreet landscape lighting. He wore dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, open at the collar, and with sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms marked with an intricate tattoo. Something in flowing script that disappeared beneath the fabric. In one hand, he held a crystal tumbler containing amber liquid. He turned as I entered, his eyes traveling over me in a slow appreciation that made my skin warm. "You look lovely," he said, setting his glass down on a side table. "That color suits you." "Thank you," I replied, fighting the urge to fidget under his gaze. "Your home is beautiful. Please sit." He gestured to a pair of leather armchairs positioned near a fireplace where flames danced over real logs. "Would you like a drink? Wine, perhaps?" I nodded, grateful for something to do with my hands. "White, if you have it." He moved to a small bar cabinet and poured wine from a chilled bottle into a delicate glass. When he handed it to me, our fingers brushed briefly, sending an unexpected current up my arm. "You seem nervous," he observed, reclaiming his own drink before sitting opposite me. "I'm having dinner with a man I barely know, in his private home, after he's taken an unusual interest in my family's medical situation," I replied with more candor than I'd intended. Nervousness seems appropriate. A smile played at his lips. Direct. "I appreciate that quality. Why am I here, Mr. Vitale?" I asked, taking a sip of wine, crisp and expensive, like everything else in this room. "Alessio, please." He leaned back, studying me. "And you're here because I wanted to speak with you away from the club, away from curious eyes and ears." "About what?" He was silent for a moment, his dark gaze contemplative. "Do you believe in fate, Emma? In invisible threads that connect certain lives, pulling them toward each other despite circumstances or logic?" The question was unexpected, almost philosophical. "I believe in coincidences and choices," I answered carefully. "And consequences. Your brother's illness. That was neither choice nor consequence. Just cruel chance." I stiffened. "I don't want to discuss Jay's condition." "Of course." He inclined his head in apology. I only mention it because it relates to why you're here. He stood, moving to a desk where he withdrew a folder. Before we continue, however, dinner awaits. Shall we? He led me through the house to a dining room where a table had been set for two with fine china and silver. A middle-aged woman with a severe bun but kind eyes served us. A meal of delicate pasta, roasted vegetables, and tender fish that would have cost me 3 days' wages at a restaurant. Throughout dinner, Alessio kept the conversation deliberately light, asking about my background, my education, my interests before life had narrowed my focus to survival. He listened with genuine attention as I reluctantly shared fragments of my former self, the art student with dreams of gallery showings, the girl who'd once backpacked through Italy on a scholarship program, sketching piazzas and churches. You've been to my homeland, he said, seeming pleased. Where? Florence, Rome, Naples, smaller towns in Tuscany, I replied, warming to the subject despite myself. I fell in love with the light there, the way it changes the colors of the buildings throughout the day. And yet you ended up serving drinks in a nightclub. There was no judgment in his tone, only curiosity. I traced the rim of my wine glass. Life happens. Dreams adjust. Or get deferred, he suggested. Not abandoned. When the meal concluded, he suggested we return to the study. The folder still lay on his desk, untouched but impossible to ignore. Once we were seated again by the fire, he finally reached for it. Emma, what I'm about to tell you may seem unlikely, he began, his accent thickening slightly. But I ask that you hear me out completely before responding. I nodded, tension coiling in my stomach. 2 months ago, one of my businesses was robbed. Not money, information. Data about my personal accounts, my family connections, certain sensitive business arrangements. His expression darkened. The thief was someone I trusted, someone who had been with my organization for years. I shifted uncomfortably. I don't understand what this has to do with me. The man's name was David Russo, Alessio said quietly. Your father. The room seemed to tilt around me, the wine in my stomach turning to acid. That's impossible, I whispered. My father died in a car accident when I was 12. Alessio opened the folder and withdrew a photograph, placing it on the table between us. The image showed a man in his 50s, with the same dark hair and eyes I saw in the mirror every day. Despite the years, I recognized him instantly. This was taken 4 weeks ago, Alessio said gently. Your father didn't die, Emma. He abandoned your family and created a new identity. He's been working for me for the past 8 years as Michael Conti, my financial administrator. My hands trembled as I reached for the photograph. No, I said, but the denial was hollow. The resemblance was undeniable. The slight cleft in the chin, the distinctive arch of eyebrows that Jay and I had both inherited. This can't be real. I discovered his true identity during our investigation into the theft, Alessio continued. When we tracked his movements, we found he'd been making anonymous donations to a hospital account. Your brother's account. The room spun faster. My father, alive all these years, sending money for Jay's treatment, but never showing his face, never acknowledging us. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice breaking. Alessio leaned forward, his eyes intent on mine. Because Michael, disappeared 3 days ago with the information he stole. And I believe he's in danger. The data he took, there are others who would kill to obtain it. People even I can't fully control. You expect me to help you find him? The question emerged as a harsh laugh. The father who let us believe he was dead? Who watched from a distance while his son suffered, while I dropped out of school to work 3 jobs? I expect nothing, Alessio replied evenly, but I'm offering you a chance to confront him, to get answers to questions you must have carried for years, and perhaps to save his life. Why would you involve me in this? Why not handle it yourself, with your resources? I gestured vaguely, encompassing his obvious wealth and power. Because despite everything, he protected you and your brother in his way. Those donations kept your family afloat when your mother died, paid for experimental treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Whatever his reasons for disappearing, he never stopped watching over you. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All those mysterious insurance approvals, the charitable foundation contributions that had arrived at critical moments. They hadn't been random acts of kindness from strangers. They'd been from the father who'd chosen to vanish from our lives. I don't owe him anything, I said, anger finally breaking through the shock. No, Alessio agreed. You don't. But I'm not asking for his sake, Emma. Then whose? Yours. His gaze held mine, surprisingly gentle. Closure has value. So does truth, no matter how painful. I stood abruptly, needing space, air. The weight of revelations pressing against my chest made it difficult to breathe. I need to think. It's too much. Alessio rose as well, keeping a respectful distance. Of course. Take all the time you need. Paolo will drive you home whenever you're ready. I moved to the window, staring blindly at the garden below. My mind raced with fragmented memories. My father's laugh, the way he'd taught me to hold a paintbrush, his absence at my high school graduation, at my mother's funeral, at Jay's diagnosis. Why did you dance with me? I asked suddenly, turning back to face him. That night at the club, you already knew who I was, didn't you? Something flickered across his face. Hesitation, perhaps, or reluctance to reveal too much. Yes, he admitted. I knew your name, your connection to David. I'd been observing you, trying to determine if you were involved in his schemes. And was I? In your determination? No. The answer came without hesitation. You are exactly what you appear to be, a woman sacrificing everything for her brother, carrying burdens that would break most people. So the dance, the car service, this dinner, it was all to get to my father through me? Alessio moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. It began that way, he said softly, a strategic approach to a potential asset. But the moment you looked at me in the club, something changed. The calculation became complicated. Complicated how? My voice was barely above a whisper. His hand rose to my face, fingers tracing the curve of my cheek with a gentleness that belied his reputation. I found myself caring about your welfare beyond its usefulness to me. It's not a feeling I'm accustomed to. Emma Russo. The admission hung in the air between us, charged with implications neither of us seemed ready to examine. His eyes dropped to my lips, and for a breathless moment, I thought he might kiss me. Part of me, a reckless, hungry part I'd suppressed for too long, wanted him to. Instead, he stepped back, composure returning like a mask sliding into place. I'll have Paolo take you home. Consider what I've told you. If you wish to help find your father, call the number I gave you. If not, he shrugged, a gesture too elegant to be casual. The car service for your brother's appointments will continue regardless. No strings, as promised. In the car, watching the lights of the city blur through tinted windows, I turned the photograph over and over in my hands. My father, older, dressed in expensive clothes I couldn't have imagined him wearing, but unmistakably the man whose death I'd mourned for 14 years. I thought of Jay, who had only vague memories of our father, who had built a mythology around the man he barely remembered. How would this truth affect him? And what did it say about me that despite the shock and anger, a part of me still yearned to see my father again, to demand the explanations we deserved? Paolo's voice broke through my thoughts. Ms. Russo, we've arrived. I looked up to see my apartment building, shabby and ordinary, after the opulence of Alessio's world. Before I could open my door, Paolo spoke again. If I may, he said, his accent thicker than Alessio's. The boss doesn't involve himself personally with business matters often. When he does, it means something. Our eyes met briefly in the rearview mirror. What are you saying? That whatever he's told you tonight, there's more to his interest than he's admitted. Even to himself, perhaps. Paolo's expression remained professional, but his eyes held a warning. Or was it encouragement? Be careful with your heart, Ms. Russo. But know that when Alessio Vitale offers protection, nothing in this city can touch what he claims as his. I stepped from the car into the cool night air, Paolo's words echoing in my mind. What he claims as his. The possessiveness of the phrase should have repelled me. Instead, As I climbed the stairs to face Jay, and the impossible truth I now carried, I felt an unsettling warmth at the idea that Alessio Vitale might see me as someone worth claiming. And as dangerous as that feeling was, it paled beside the storm that would erupt when I told my brother our father was alive, in trouble, and somehow entangled with one of the most powerful and feared men in the city. Jay was still awake when I entered our apartment, the television flickering silently in the dim living room. One look at my face and he straightened, muting the program. "What happened?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. I sank onto the couch beside him, the photograph clutched in my hand. For a moment, words failed me. How do you tell someone that the foundation of their understanding of their own life is built on a lie? "Emma, you're scaring me," Jay said, reaching for my hand. I passed him the photograph wordlessly. He stared at it, confusion clouding his features before slow recognition dawned. The resemblance between Jay and our father had always been stronger than mine. The same jawline, the same way their eyes crinkled when they smiled. "Is this?" he whispered, unable to complete the question. "Dad," I confirmed, my voice hollow. "Taken 4 weeks ago." Jay's hand trembled as he traced our father's face in the image. "How? Where did you get this?" I told him everything. About Alessio's revelation, about our father's new identity, about the theft and the danger, about the money that had mysteriously appeared for his treatments over the years. Jay listened in stunned silence, tears gathering in his eyes but not falling. "He's been alive this whole time," he said finally, his voice breaking, watching us from a distance, but never showing his face, never holding Mom's hand when she was dying, never seeing what this disease has done to me. The raw pain in his voice broke something in me. I pulled my brother into an embrace, feeling his tears dampen my shoulder. We stayed that way for a long time, mourning not just the father we thought we'd lost years ago, but the father who'd chosen to abandon us. "What are you going to do?" Jay asked when we finally separated, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I don't know," I admitted. "Alessio wants me to help find him. He thinks I might know something or that Dad, Michael, might contact me." Jay's expression hardened. "And what does the great Alessio Vitale get out of this arrangement?" "The information Dad stole, I suppose," I said, though Alessio's motivation suddenly seemed more complex than I'd initially understood. "And maybe closure for whatever business relationship they had." "And what do we get?" Jay asked, voicing the question I'd been turning over since leaving Alessio's mansion. Besides reopened wounds, I had no answer for him. Outside our window, a siren wailed in the distance, a reminder of the city continuing around our private upheaval. My phone buzzed with a text, but I ignored it. "I need to sleep," Jay said finally, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. "We both do. Tomorrow we can decide what to do with this." He gestured at the photograph still clutched in his hand, unable to set it down despite the pain it caused. That night, sleep eluded me again. I tossed in my narrow bed, mind racing between the father who had abandoned us and the enigmatic man who had brought him back into our lives. Near dawn, I reached for my phone, checking the message I'd ignored earlier. It was from Alessio. "I understand tonight was difficult. Take tomorrow off. The club manager has been informed." The presumption of his words, taking over my schedule again without consultation, should have irritated me. Instead, I felt an unwelcome flutter of gratitude. A day to process, to decide. Another small kindness wrapped in the trappings of control. I typed back, "Thank you. I need time." His response came immediately, suggesting he'd been awake as well. "Time is the one luxury I'm not certain we have. Your father's information has begun to circulate. When certain parties realize what he's taken, the danger increases exponentially." I stared at the words, a chill running through me. "Are you saying they'll kill him?" "I'm saying there are powerful interests involved. Interests even I must negotiate with carefully." The admission of limitation from a man like Alessio carried its own warning. I sat up, suddenly alert. "Why tell me this now?" There was a longer pause before his reply. "Because I've had reports of someone watching your building tonight. Someone who isn't one of mine. My blood froze. I moved to the window, carefully peering through the blinds at the street below. In the pre-dawn gloom, a dark sedan was parked across the street, its windows tinted, engine off, but a faint glow of a cigarette visible inside. "I see the car," I texted with shaking fingers. "Don't approach it. Paolo is 2 minutes away. Pack essentials for yourself and your brother. You're not safe there anymore." Panic surged through me. "We can't just leave. Jay has treatment tomorrow. He needs—" "Everything will be arranged," came the swift response. "Emma, trust me, your father's enemies now see you as leverage. They'll use you to draw him out." The word trust hung in my mind as I rushed to wake Jay, explaining in hurried whispers as I helped him dress, as I threw clothes and medications into bags. Trust Alessio Vitale, a man I barely knew, whose world operated by rules I didn't understand. But what choice did we have, if even half of what he'd told me was true? Staying put was no longer an option. Paolo arrived as promised, accompanied by another suited man who scanned the street professionally before ushering us into the waiting car. Jay, pale and confused but trusting my judgment, leaned heavily on my arm as we descended the stairs for what I somehow knew would be the last time. "Where are we going?" I asked Paolo as we pulled away from the curb, the dark sedan still ominously present across the street. "A secure location," he replied, eyes constantly checking the mirrors. "Mr." Vitale's instructions were explicit. "You and your brother will be protected until the situation is resolved." The secure location turned out to be a modern high-rise on the river, its lobby staffed by security guards who didn't blink at our arrival. The apartment Paolo led us to occupied half the 20th floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights just beginning to fade in the approaching dawn. "Mr. Vitale will join you shortly," Paolo said, setting our bags down in a spacious living area decorated in neutral tones. "The kitchen is stocked. There are 2 bedrooms down that hallway, each with its own bathroom. Please make yourselves comfortable." After he left, Jay sank onto a leather sofa, his face drawn with fatigue and confusion. What the hell is happening? Who is this guy to you?" "I honestly don't know," I said, the events of the past few days spinning around me like a surreal dream. "My boss, maybe my father's enemy, maybe our protector. Or maybe he's using you to get to Dad," Jay suggested, always the more practical of us despite his illness. "Have you considered that?" I had, of course. But something in the way Alessio had looked at me, the gentle touch of his fingers against my cheek, suggested motives more complex than simple manipulation. Or perhaps that was exactly what a man like him wanted me to believe. The sun had fully risen by the time a soft knock announced Alessio's arrival. He entered without waiting for a response, dressed in another impeccable suit despite the early hour, his expression grave as he took in Jay's exhausted form on the sofa and my own disheveled appearance. "I apologize for the disruption," he said, his accent more pronounced than I'd yet heard it. "But it was necessary. The men watching your building are connected to a rival organization that has been trying to obtain the information your father stole." "And what exactly is this information?" Jay asked, his voice sharper than usual. "What was so important that it's put us in danger?" Alessio's gaze moved between us, assessing. "Financial data," he said finally. "Banking details, client lists, certain sensitive business connections. But more importantly, evidence of a mole within my organization who's been feeding information to my competitors for years." "And you think that mole is our father?" I said, the pieces falling into place. "I know it is," Alessio replied, his tone hardening slightly. "The question is who he's working for now, and what he plans to do with what he's taken." Jay leaned forward, wincing at the movement. "Why would he steal from you after 8 years? Why now?" A shadow crossed Alessio's face. "That is what I hoped your sister might help me understand." "I haven't spoken to him in 14 years, I reminded him. "I thought he was dead." "Yes, but he's been watching you. The hospital donations prove that much." Alessio moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. "People who maintain secret surveillance often leave patterns, traces. Has anything unusual happened recently? Unexpected encounters? Strange messages?" I started to shake my head, then paused, a memory surfacing. "About a month ago, I got a card in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a sketch of the fountain in Florence where I used to sit and draw during my study abroad. I thought it was from an old classmate. Alessio turned sharply. Do you still have it? It was in my apartment, I said, regret washing over me. I didn't think to grab it when we left. I'll send someone to retrieve it, he said, already reaching for his phone. After a brief conversation in rapid Italian, he returned his attention to us. Your brother's medical care will continue without interruption. I've arranged for a specialist to come here this afternoon. Jay's eyebrows rose. Here? A doctor is just going to make a house call to some random apartment? A small smile touched Alessio's lips. Dr. Patel has been generously compensated for the inconvenience. She'll bring the necessary equipment for your treatment. The casual display of power and influence, bringing medical professionals to private residences with a single phone call, was another glimpse into Alessio's world, a world where money and connections removed ordinary obstacles. And how long do you expect us to stay here? I asked, gesturing around the apartment. We have jobs, lives. Your jobs will hold, Alessio replied with that same calm certainty. As for how long, that depends on how quickly we can locate your father. And what happens when you find him? Jay asked. The question I'd been afraid to voice. Alessio's expression became unreadable. That depends on his willingness to cooperate. The implication hung in the air, cold and threatening. For the first time since meeting him, I glimpsed the man behind the polished exterior, the one who inspired fear with just his name. If you hurt him, I began. I have no desire to hurt David Russo, Alessio interrupted, his voice surprisingly gentle. Despite his betrayal, he served me well for many years. But the information he's taken puts many people at risk, including the two of you. Recovering it is my priority. Jay struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. I need to rest, he said, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Emma can fill me in later. I helped him to one of the bedrooms, settling him on a bed more luxurious than any he'd slept on in years. When I returned to the living room, Alessio stood exactly where I'd left him, watching the city with a contemplative expression. You're using us as bait, I said quietly, closing the bedroom door behind me. Hoping he'll reach out, try to contact us now that we're in your custody. Alessio turned, something like admiration flashing in his dark eyes. Yes, he admitted. But I'm also protecting you from those who would use you in exactly the same way, with far less care for your well-being. The lesser of two evils, then, if you prefer to see it that way. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, smell the now familiar scent of his cologne. But I meant what I said about caring for your welfare, Emma, beyond its usefulness to me. I held his gaze, searching for deception. Prove it. Tell me the whole truth about my father. What really happened 14 years ago? Why did he fake his death and abandon his family? Alessio's expression tightened. That is not my story to tell. Convenient, I said bitterly. No, respectful, he countered. Some truths can only be shared by those who live them. Your father owes you that explanation himself. Before I could argue further, his phone rang. He answered with a curt greeting, listening intently before his expression darkened. After a brief exchange in Italian, he ended the call. What is it? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Alessio's eyes found mine. Something like concern. Or was it possession? Flaring in their depths. Your father has made contact. He wants to meet. With you? With you. Alessio's jaw tightened. Alone. Absolutely not, Alessio said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence that had followed his announcement. It's too dangerous. I stood my ground, arms crossed over my chest. You don't get to decide that. He's my father. He's a thief who stole sensitive information and put a target on his own children's backs, Alessio countered, anger making his accent thicker. And now he wants you to meet him alone? It's a trap, Emma. For whom? I challenged. For me? Or for you? Alessio's jaw worked as he struggled to maintain his composure. 2 hours had passed since the call, and we'd been circling this argument with increasing intensity. In the bedroom, Jay was still sleeping, unaware of the new development. Think about it, Alessio said, modulating his tone with visible effort. Why contact you now, after 14 years of silence? After watching from a distance while you and your brother struggled? He could have revealed himself at any time. His logic was sound, which only fueled my frustration. Maybe he's trying to protect us, I suggested. Maybe he thinks explaining will help us understand why he did what he did. Or maybe someone is holding a gun to his head while he makes this call, Alessio replied bluntly. Maybe they're using him to get to you. And through you, to me. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. Outside, the afternoon sun glinted off distant skyscrapers, the city continuing its ordinary rhythm while my world tilted on its axis. What would you have me do then? I asked, defeat creeping into my voice. Ignore my father's first direct contact in 14 years? Alessio sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, but not touching me. No, he said quietly. I would have you meet him, but with protection. My protection. He specifically said to come alone. And I'm specifically saying that's not an option. His tone brooked no argument, but his eyes had softened. Emma, please, trust me in this, if nothing else. I've lived in this world all my life. I understand its dangers in ways you cannot. There was that word again, trust. Such a simple concept, so impossibly complicated between us. If I agree to your protection, I said slowly, I need your promise that you won't hurt him, that you'll let me speak to him first, alone, even if you're nearby. Alessio considered this, his expression grave. I'll give you 5 minutes alone with him before I or my men intervene. And I promise no harm will come to him from me or mine unless he poses a direct threat. It was the best compromise I was likely to get. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting, how the tension between us had shifted from antagonistic to something more complex, more dangerous. Why do you care what happens to me? I asked. The question that had been burning in me since that first dance. The truth, Alessio, not some line about business interests or strategic assets. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his hand rose to my face, fingers tracing the curve of my cheek with unexpected tenderness. Because you remind me of someone I used to know, he said softly. Someone who sacrificed everything for family, who faced impossible choices with courage. Someone I couldn't save. His eyes held mine, vulnerability showing through the cracks in his carefully maintained facade. And because when I saw you that night in the club, something I thought long dead stirred back to life. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Before I could respond, the bedroom door opened, and Jay appeared, leaning heavily on his cane. I heard raised voices, he said, eyes moving between us, noting our proximity with raised eyebrows. What's happening now? I explained the situation, while Alessio maintained a respectful distance, his expression once again composed. Jay listened without interrupting, his face growing more troubled with each detail. So our father, who's been playing dead for 14 years, suddenly wants a family reunion, he summarized when I'd finished, in the middle of whatever criminal mess he's created. And you're considering going? Put that way, it did sound insane. I need answers, Jay. My brother's expression softened. I know you do. We both do. But not at the cost of your safety. She will be safe, Alessio interjected, his tone leaving no room for doubt. I'll personally ensure it. Jay studied him with unexpected intensity. Why? What's my sister to you, Vitale? The question hung in the air, charged with implications neither Jay nor I had voiced aloud. Alessio met my brother's gaze without flinching. Someone worth protecting, he said simply. Jay held his stare for a long moment, before nodding once, a grudging acknowledgement. If she goes, I go too. Jay, no, I protested immediately. Your condition has nothing to do with this, he interrupted firmly. He's my father too, Emma. And if there's danger, we face it together. That's what we've always done. Alessio surprised me by nodding. We can arrange it safely. A controlled environment, with medical support nearby if needed. He turned to me. The meeting is set for tonight, 9 o'clock at the Botanical Gardens, the conservatory. A public place, I noted. Closed to the public after 7, Alessio corrected, but accessible with the right connections. Neutral ground, relatively speaking. My men will secure the perimeter before you arrive. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Dr. Patel arrived as promised, administering Jay's treatment in the apartment's spare bedroom with equipment that appeared as if by magic. Alessio left briefly, returning with clothes for both of us. Items from our apartment, including the card I'd mentioned, now sealed in a plastic evidence bag. By 8:30, tension had drawn everyone tight as bowstrings. Jay sat beside me in the back of Alessio's car, his face pale but determined. Alessio himself sat across from us, speaking occasionally into his phone in rapid Italian, coordinating his men's movements with the precision of a military commander. The botanical gardens were eerily beautiful at night, the path to the conservatory lit by small ground lights that cast strange shadows through exotic plants. 2 of Alessio's men flanked us as we approached the glass structure, its interior illuminated to reveal a jungle of tropical foliage. "Remember," Alessio said quietly as we reached the entrance, "5 minutes alone, then I come in, regardless of what's happening. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call out immediately." I nodded, too nervous to speak. Jay squeezed my hand, his presence steadying despite his own physical weakness. "We'll be right outside," Alessio assured us, his eyes lingering on mine for a moment longer than necessary. "Be careful." The air inside the conservatory was warm and humid, heavy with the scent of flowers and damp earth. Our footsteps echoed slightly on the stone path as we moved deeper into the artificial jungle. He was waiting by the central fountain, older than in the photograph but unmistakably our father. David Russo, now Michael Conti, stood with his back very straight, hands clasped before him. When he saw us, something like pain flashed across his face. "Emma," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered from childhood. "Jay." His eyes lingered on my brother's cane, grief evident in his expression. "You came together. I should have known you would. Did you really think I'd come alone?" I asked, anger suddenly displacing nervousness. "After 14 years of letting us think you were dead?" He flinched as though I'd struck him. "I deserve that. I deserve much worse." "Why?" Jay asked, the single word containing a lifetime of abandonment and pain. "Why did you leave us? Leave Mom? She died thinking she was a widow." Our father's eyes closed briefly, genuine anguish contorting his features. "Because I thought it was the only way to keep you all safe." "Safe from what?" I demanded. "From the life I'd become entangled in," he replied, gesturing vaguely around us. "From the debts I'd accumulated, the promises I'd made to dangerous people. People who wouldn't hesitate to use my family as leverage. People like Alessio Vitale," Jay suggested. A bitter smile twisted our father's mouth. Vitale was the least of my concerns back then. He was still making his way up in the organization, just beginning to build his empire. He shook his head. "No, there were others. Men without his code, men who would have thought nothing of hurting a child to send a message. So you faked your death," I said flatly. "Left us to struggle alone, watched from a distance while Mom worked herself to death trying to support us. While Jay got sick. I never stopped watching over you," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "The insurance payouts, the medical coverage, the mysterious donations, that was all me, working through channels that couldn't be traced back." "You could have come back," Jay said, his voice breaking slightly. "After Mom died, after I got diagnosed, we needed a father, not anonymous bank transfers." Our father moved toward us, stopping when I instinctively stepped back. "I couldn't risk it," he said softly. "By then, I was too deep in Vitale's organization. There was no clean way out. Until now," I said, understanding dawning. "Until you stole whatever information he's so desperate to recover." He nodded, a flash of something like pride crossing his features. "Leverage, insurance, a way out finally. At the cost of putting us in danger," I pointed out. "There are men watching our apartment. We had to flee in the middle of the night." Surprise registered on his face. "Vitale moved you? You're under his protection?" "No thanks to you," Jay said bitterly. Our father's expression darkened. "You don't understand. Vitale isn't who you think he is. He's—" "Time's up," came Alessio's voice from behind us. He emerged from the shadows like a predator, flanked by 2 of his men. His eyes were cold as he regarded our father. "Hello, Michael. Or should I say David?" Our father stiffened, but didn't appear surprised. I knew you wouldn't let them come alone. Unlike you, I don't abandon those under my protection, Alessio replied, his tone deadly soft. Where is the drive, David? Not here, our father said with a thin smile. Somewhere safe. Insurance, as I was explaining to my children. Insurance against what? I asked, looking between the two men. What exactly did you take? Our father's eyes never left Alessio. The truth. About the Callaway deal. About what really happened to Antonio Vitale 5 years ago. About where certain bodies are buried, literally and figuratively. Alessio's expression didn't change, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. Your children don't need to be involved in this, David. This is between you and me. They're already involved, our father countered. You've seen to that by bringing them into your web, by taking an interest in my daughter. Heat flooded my cheeks at the implication. Jay shifted beside me, tension radiating from him despite his physical weakness. What do you want? Alessio asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. What I've always wanted. Safety for my family, a clean slate. Our father's gaze shifted to Jay, softening with genuine concern. And the best medical care money can buy for my son. You had all of that working for me, Alessio pointed out. You were well compensated, protected. Your family received the benefits of your position, even if they didn't know its source, until Antonio died, our father said, something hard entering his voice. Until I saw what happens to those who know too much about the Vitale family business, a subtle change came over Alessio. A stillness that was somehow more threatening than any overt aggression. Antonio was my brother, he said quietly. His death was investigated by the police and ruled an accident. We both know it wasn't, our father replied. I looked between them, sensing undercurrents I couldn't fully comprehend. Who was Antonio? I asked. My older brother, Alessio said without looking away from our father. He died in a car accident 5 years ago. The same accident that befell 3 other people who knew about Callaway that year, our father added. Quite the coincidence. Alessio's men tensed, hands moving subtly toward weapons concealed under their jackets. The air in the conservatory seemed to thicken, danger humming like electricity. Stop, I said suddenly, stepping between the 2 men. Both of you. This isn't helping anyone. To my surprise, both men fell silent, their eyes shifting to me. Dad, I said, the word strange on my tongue after so many years. Whatever you think you're doing, this isn't the way. You can't blackmail your way to safety. And you can't make up for 14 years of absence with one grand gesture. Emma, he began, but I cut him off. No. You don't get to explain away what you did to us. To Mom, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. But I also don't want to lose you again, now that I know you're alive. So whatever this is, whatever you've done, fix it. Find another way. I turned to Alessio, whose dark eyes watched me with an intensity that made my heart race. And you. If you care for me at all, like you claimed, then find a resolution that doesn't end with my father dead or disappeared again. I've lost him once already. I won't survive losing him twice. Something shifted in Alessio's expression. Respect, perhaps, or admiration. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed more than words could have. A compromise, then, he said, addressing our father but keeping his eyes on me. Return what you've taken, David, all of it. In exchange, you have my word that no harm will come to you. You'll be free to have a relationship with your children, under certain conditions. What conditions? Our father asked suspiciously. You'll relocate, somewhere safe but distant. Your contact with Emma and Jay will be open but monitored, at least initially. And you'll sign documents ensuring your silence about certain matters. Alessio's voice was businesslike, but his eyes, still on mine, held something warmer. In return, I will personally ensure that Jay receives the best medical treatment available anywhere in the world. No expense spared. Our father's laugh was hollow. And I'm supposed to trust the word of Alessio Vitale? The man doesn't make deals with thieves. He eliminates problems. He'll keep his word, I said, with a certainty that surprised even me, because breaking it would mean losing me. And for whatever reason, he doesn't want that to happen. Alessio's expression softened almost imperceptibly, confirmation that I'd read him correctly. "Is this really what you want, Emma?" our father asked, searching my face. "To trust your future to a man like him?" "I'm not trusting him with my future," I corrected. "I'm trusting him with yours. There's a difference." Jay moved to stand beside me, his hand warm on my shoulder. "We want you in our lives, Dad," he said quietly. "But not like this. Not as a fugitive. Not using us as pawns in whatever game you're playing." Our father looked between us, the children he'd abandoned and watched from afar for 14 years. Something crumbled in his expression. Pride, perhaps. Or resolve. "The drive is in a safety deposit box," he said finally. "Keys in my hotel room. The code to decrypt the files is Jay's birthday." Alessio nodded to one of his men, who slipped away silently to retrieve it. "So, that's it?" our father asked bitterly. "I just surrender everything I've built over 14 years on your word?" "No," Alessio replied. "You surrender it for them." He gestured to Jay and me, for the chance to know your children again, for the opportunity to be a father instead of a shadow. The truth of his words hung in the humid air between us. Our father's shoulders sagged slightly, defeat and perhaps relief washing over his features. "I only ever wanted to protect them," he said softly. "So did I," Alessio replied, surprising me with his candor, though my reasons evolved over time. Their eyes met in a moment of unexpected understanding, two men from different worlds, united briefly by a shared purpose. Then Alessio turned to me, his expression softening. "It's done," he said simply. "Your father will be relocated once we verify the information. You and Jay will have his new contact details. The arrangements for Jay's treatment will begin immediately." "And us?" I asked, the question encompassing more than I could articulate. Alessio's smile was small but genuine. "That," he said softly, "is entirely up to you." 6 months later, the garden of the villa overlooking Lake Como was in full bloom, the scent of roses mingling with the earthy aroma of the lake. I sat on the terrace, sketchbook open in my lap, capturing the play of light on water, the mountains rising purple in the distance. Behind me, the sound of laughter drifted through open French doors. Jay and our father, engaged in a heated chess match. Jay's new treatment, pioneered at a Swiss clinic Alessio had connections with, had halted his disease progression. He still used a cane, but his strength was returning, his future suddenly expansive again. Our father, still Michael to the world, but David again to us, was learning how to be a parent after 14 years of absence. There were difficult conversations, tears and lingering anger, but also forgiveness, gradually offered and gratefully received. The monitoring Alessio had initially insisted on had eased over time, as trust cautiously rebuilt itself. My thoughts turned to Alessio himself, due to arrive that evening. His business frequently brought him to Italy, and when it did, he made time to visit. Our relationship had evolved in ways neither of us had anticipated that night at Club Onyx, moving from suspicion to grudging respect to something deeper, more complex. We were taking it slowly, both aware of the complications our histories created, the power imbalance we needed to carefully navigate. But when he looked at me with those dark eyes, when his hand found mine as we walked along the lake shore, I felt something I'd thought lost forever in the years of struggle and sacrifice. Hope. Hope that sometimes, even in the most unlikely circumstances, broken pieces could be reassembled into something new, something strong. The sound of tires on gravel announced his arrival. I set aside my sketchbook, feeling the familiar flutter in my chest, as his car appeared through the cypress trees lining the drive. He emerged like he belonged in this landscape, elegant, controlled, powerful. But when his eyes found me on the terrace, the smile that transformed his features was for me alone. "Emma," he called, climbing the steps to join me. I rose to meet him, remembering another time he'd called my name across a crowded club floor, another moment when everything had changed with a single word. "Dance with me. He'll see you're taken." As Alessio's arms encircled me, as his lips found mine in a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility, I realized the truth in those words. I had been taken, not as possession, but as choice. And in that taking, somehow, I had found myself again.